Se ga kličem že jaz. Se ga jaz kličem. Ja, sam pa se ponovadi ne v glas. Kako pa kar začnemo? Ali počakaj?
A še ne bi prišel kaj?
A?
Kaj boš marko kaj?
Kaj?
Kaj boš marko kaj?
Ja, ne vem. Na glas, ne? Se po mojem bolj. Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutlale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Sarasvate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shrivadi Paschetya Dashadarana Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadar Shri Vasad Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. A gremo enkrat skupaj. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Ashankar. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Așa în cred. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare, Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare, Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. I shall get good. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Shri Panchatattva ki jai. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jayo Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Srila Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Gurudev, 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev, Jaya Jaya Gurudev, Jaya Gurudev, Gurudev, Jaya Jaya Gurudev, Jaya Jaya Gurudev, Vancha kalpatarubhyascha Kripa sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha Panchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa sindhubhya eva cha Lahko enkrat to skupaj zapojemo. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha Kripa sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha All glories to Samuel Devotee ki jai.
Srčno pozdravljeni, dragi prijatelji Bhakti in vsi ostali gostje. Najprej se zahvalim Bhakti Mihu, Bhaktin Amandi in Bhakti Marku za njihov izjemen kirtan. Dobro ste nas ogreli. Danes nam bo predal lekcijo njegova svetost Praladananda Swami. Lekcija bo v angleškem jeziku. Vsi, ki potrebujete prevod, so vam na voljo slušalke pri Dayal Chandri, Prabhuju, tu pri oknu. Tako da
Hare Rama, Hare Rama, His Divine Grace, Shalasi, Bhaktivedanta Swami Raj, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Gaur Premanande, Haribo, Slava Zabrani Bhaktam, Slava Shri Guru, Shri Grangi, Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale, Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Tinamane, Namaste Saraswatam Deve, Gauravani Pacharane, Nirvishesha Shinivadi Pastkadhyade Satarane. What happened to the stand? Yeah, the stand. Om Agyana Timanandasya Gananjana Salakaya Chaksu Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Didati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavam Scha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vidham Dham Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Visakan Zvitamscha Hey Krishna Karna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Prishu Manu Sudha Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakapa Trivyasra Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patidanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Pranityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya So I'm going to just read from the Nectar of Instruction. I can find it here. Oh, you see. Yeah, it should be here. Can't connect. So this is verse number 5. I'm just going to read it, otherwise it'll take too long. We only have a half an hour anyhow. Krishneti yasya giritam manasadriyeta dikshasti chat pranitivis chabhajantam isham shushu shaya chabhajanam ananyanya indati sunya hridayam usita sangalabdya. One should honor the devotee. One should mentally honor the devotee who chants the holy name of Lord Krishna. One should offer humble obeisances to the devotee who has undergone spiritual initiation, diksha, and is engaged in worshiping the deity. One should associate with and faithfully serve that pure devotee who is advanced in undeviated devotional service and whose heart is completely devoid of the propensity to criticize others. In the previous verse, Krishna, or Rupa Goswami, talks about 6 loving exchanges, that the process of Krishna consciousness is the process of bhakti. Bhakti means, first of all, to Krishna. As it says, Ishvareta dineshu, Balisheshu dutsatsucha, prema maitri kripo pega, yat karoti samadhimaha. That the first business of the devotee is to love Krishna, Ishvara. So that's prema. Now, Krishna happens to be everything. So Krishna is everything, but Krishna is most easily realized through the devotees, because they remind us, or they explain to us how Krishna is everything, and they act as if Krishna was God. And therefore they're an example, and they give us an explanation to understand things properly. So therefore the devotees, there's Maitri. For the Bhakta, there's Maitri. And they have a mission. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came, he has a mission to help the innocent. Now the devotees are also hopefully part of the innocent sometimes. So for them, there is kripa. And for the non-devotees or atheists or against Krishna, there's upeksha. There's disregard or detachment from them. So Rupa Goswami tells us, or Prabhupada tells us in the purport, that these loving exchanges have to be done appropriately. That is, offering gifts in charity, accepting charitable gifts, revealing one's mind in confidence, inquiring confidential, accepting prasad and offering prasad. These are 6 symptoms of love exchanged by one devotee or another. Basically what they mean is like here, someone's talking about Krishna, about their realizations of Krishna, that they've gotten specifically from serving Prabhupada, because this movement, our founder Acharya is Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada, and therefore any valid realization is, in terms of ISKCON, in terms of Krishna consciousness movement, that Prabhupada has established, is going to come in accordance with Prabhupada's instructions and his realization. Because never in the history of, that we know of history, has anyone been able to spread Krishna consciousness all over the world simply by becoming a faithful servant of his spiritual master. Therefore, the ideal disciple is Srila Prabhupada, and therefore being the ideal disciple, he's also the ideal teacher. So by his instructions and by his example, we can learn how to become an ideal servant of him, and therefore become an ideal devotee. And Prabhupada has his assistants helping us to understand, according to our time, place, and circumstance, how to apply the teachings in order to love Krishna, cooperate with the devotees, help the innocent, and avoid the atheists, so that the followers of Prabhupada are supposed to assist him in explaining that to others and setting an example of that to others, so that we can become closer to Prabhupada in our disciple succession and ultimately Krishna. Because ultimately it's Krishna who has to be satisfied that we're sincerely trying to serve him through his representatives. And if he's satisfied, then he reveals himself. And if we satisfy his most direct representative, servant, Srimati Radharani, then Krishna becomes very easily pleased. As long as we don't commit what's called aparad. Apa means against, and Radha against Radha. So as long as we don't do anything that's offending to Srimati Radharani or her servants, then we can please, it's possible to please Krishna. So these loving exchanges include things like someone talking about their realizations, so that, and then hearing those realizations is part of the loving exchanges. The reason why we have a Vyasasan, the person who's sitting on it, saying something about Krishna, is to impress people that maybe he has something to say. Otherwise, if the whole audience was sitting on a Vyasasan and the speaker was sitting on the floor, everyone sitting on the Vyasasan would think, why is he sitting on the floor? If he had any importance, he would be up here with us. So if you reverse the roles and the speaker is saying something, it's not so that the speaker can breathe better than everyone else, because the air is better up here. That's not the purpose of sitting. It's to create some kind of impression that maybe he has something to say of some value, some importance. And also offering gifts. So the gift we're offering principally is the holy name. How to chant the holy name offenselessly without aparad, so that Krishna and Srimati Radharani reveal themselves to us in the holy name. And of course everyone knows what prasadam is here, I think. If you don't, you just have to wait another 20 minutes and you'll find out. Usually prasad, most devotees come not to hear the eloquent talk, or expecting to gift and charity. We don't hand out so many gifts around here on the Sunday feast. Even the pizza you have to pay for. I think you have to pay for it, don't you? And so, but the prasadam is, I think it's free. At least I never paid for it. So these are the loving exchanges that we're supposed to be experiencing. But who to exchange them with, this is what Srila Rupa Goswami goes over in this 5th verse. Because it should be done with intelligence, otherwise we'll become disappointed. It's like offering prasad. So if you think, I've read in the Bhagavad Gita that in the heart of all living entities is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and therefore every body, even the elephant, even the dog eater, even the Brahma, they're all Krishna's in their heart. Now, I've committed so many offenses throughout my devotional service, I actually thought that the tiger was a tiger. And now I found out that Krishna is in his heart. So now I should try to free myself from an offense. I should find some way of getting into the tiger cage and offering him my respects. Free myself from this aparad. And that way I'll be able to offer myself as prasad also. I'm a Brahmin, I'm offered. He should at least get something in the mode of goodness. So that's a misapplication of the loving exchange. Not for the tiger side, but from... He'll gladly accept our offering. So we have to appropriately exchange these loving exchanges, and Prabhupada goes over what the different symptoms are of the different personalities, the different levels, beginning with Kanishta Adhikari, and there are 4 major Kanishta Adhikaris within the nectar devotion on the 4 different levels of Kanishta Adhikari: distress, wanting money, wanting some comfort, inquisitive, or trying to get free from material existence completely. So those are represented by Gajendra, the elephant, by Dhruv Maharaj, the prince, by the sages of Naimisharanya, hearing Sutta Goswami, and from the 4 Kumaras. So all of them, they perform some kind of service to Krishna, not for Krishna's pleasure, but they wanted something. And indeed, by worshiping Krishna, they got what they wanted, because they did it very sincerely. Properly they did it. So that's called Kanishta Adhikari. That goes all the way up to the 4 Kumaras, and therefore we can't think that Kanishta Adhikari, oh, Prabhu, you're just a Kanishta Adhikari. That's right, I'm the 5th Kumara. It's not so easy to be. Prabhupada said, the perfect Brahmin, that's the ideal Kanishta Adhikari. So beyond that, of course, is pure devotional service, beginning with Madhyama Adhikari, where they see Krishna as the object of worship. They try to make friends with the devotees. They look at the devotees not as an object of competition, but as an object of learning, that they have something to learn from them and cooperate. In other words, every devotee who's working on the Madhyama Adhikari platform, they try to see the good qualities of the devotees, especially the qualities that are manifested by the Uttama Adhikari. And Prabhupada defines them, the qualities of the Uttama Adhikari, in a way which is most perceivable by an ordinary devotee. Namely, when a neophyte devotee is actually initiated, engaged in devotional service, by the orders of the spiritual master, he should be accepted immediately as a bona fide Vaishnava, and obeisances should be offered to him. So here's Prabhupada's definition of Uttama Adhikari, which is perceivable by us most easily. Out of many such Vaishnavas, one may be found to be very seriously engaged in the service of the Lord, and strictly following all the regular principles, chanting the prescribed number of rounds on japa beads, and always thinking of how to expand the Krishna consciousness movement. So Prabhupada puts in a few words there like strictly, and always thinking, and seriously engaged in the service of the Lord, strictly following all the regular principles, always thinking of how to expand the Krishna consciousness movement. So this is our service, to see the devotees and try to see whoever is more seriously engaged than I am, whoever is more strictly following the principles than I am, who's ever chanting the prescribed numbers of rounds better than I am, and who's always thinking more than I am of how to expand the Krishna consciousness movement. So we should take them as examples to hear their instructions, how they became more strict, how they became more serious, how they became better than I am. Hear from them how they did it, because that way we can do it also. Now, in the association of devotees, we can either become indifferent to them, thinking you're pretty useless to me, or we could become envious of them. Why are you better than I am? This is democracy. You're an illusion, Prabhu. You're just pretending to be more strict than I am. We know your heart. Or we can be envious, or we can be neutral. Okay, you're better than I am, so what? Don't get proud. You'll offend a devotee if you do. Or we can be appreciative. Oh, you're so great, Prabhu. You're the sun and the moon. You're an alpha and omega. You're everything. Don't ask me to do anything. Or we can actually develop a service attitude, submission, submissive inquiry, and service. And therefore, in that way, develop their qualities. So that's our choice. That means that the devotee is just a little bit better than I am in some way, and we appreciate it, and we hear from them submissively, and we try to serve them in some way, at least by following their example and their instructions, and that way we develop their good qualities. Specifically here, we become more serious about being engaged in devotional service, we more strictly follow the regular principles, chant the prescribed number of rounds of our japa beads better, and we think more about how to spread the Krishna consciousness movement. So these are the significant things that Prabhupada points out. Otherwise, we can learn so many things from the devotees, but if we don't learn these things, then we're more or less wasting our time. And Prabhupada talks about the Madhyama Adhikari, but then he comes back to the Uttama Adhikari at the end. Now this is where things get tricky, because in ISKCON, we have certain catchphrases and words. As soon as you say them, everyone thinks, oh my God, what happened to him? Where is he coming from? So at the end, Prabhupada defines more clearly, more elaborately what an Uttama Adhikari is. And there he talks about Shraddha, because specifically he's talking about Uttama Adhikari from the point of view of Shraddha. That is realization, actually experience of Krishna, who's actually given his heart to Krishna. Not just his faith, well, not just his service, but also his heart. Not just his activities, but he's actually surrendered his heart to Krishna. And therefore, and he's done that through the faithfully chanting the holy name, engaging his tongue in Krishna's service, chanting without offense the holy name. And then Prabhupada writes, when a person realizes himself to be an eternal servitor of Krishna, he loses interest in everything but Krishna's service. So this is, again, Prabhupada is using the word realized. That is, he's at least on the Bhava Bhakti platform, the very beginning of Uttama Adhikari. Always thinking of Krishna, devising means to spread the holy name of Krishna. He understands that his only business is in spreading the Krishna consciousness movement all over the world. Such a person is to be recognized as an Uttamadhikari, and his association should be immediately accepted according to the 6 processes, Dadati Pratigrinati. So such a person, I think everyone here will probably agree, is Srila Prabhupada, who happens to be the founder Acharya of ISKCON. Founder Acharya means that he's the standard, that everything else has to be measured according to his instructions and his example. Now, if we don't know what his instructions are, we don't know what his examples are, then we won't measure anything. And therefore, we'll judge everything according to our own conceptions or according to someone else's relative conception. Of course, whoever we take as in our authority, whether our Shiksha Guru or Diksha Guru, they should be, of course, understanding this, that everything they do and say, especially as a position of authority, should be on the basis of what they've understood to be Prabhupada's instructions and example. As Prabhupada said, our process is very simple. We don't have to invent anything. We just have to follow the predecessor Acharya. And we happen to have one recognized Acharya in our society. Not that we don't have many initiating gurus, and especially we have even more instructing gurus, but we have one founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada, that everything has to be judged according to his instructions. And so, well, under his instructions, then we can find out everyone, if it's our initiating guru or our instructing guru, and they're following Prabhupada, then we're connected. Now the thing is that Prabhupada is not a Vaishnava, a pure Vaishnava, is not just an ordinary guru. An Acharya is not just an ordinary guru, he's actually a directly empowered person, directly empowered by Krishna. So that Prabhupada, for instance, is here in the temple in his Murti form, but it's not just a Murti form, it's not just a deity form, any more than the deity in the temple is just a form. It's actually Krishna himself. I hope most of you know the story of Shakshi Gopal, where the witness Gopal, where the deity, the 2 Brahmins went before the deity, and the elderly Brahmin promised his daughter in marriage to the younger Brahmin, and then they made Gopal deity the witness, that if there was any problem, that the Gopal deity would come and act as a witness. And indeed there was a problem, and so the younger Brahmin went to the Gopal deity in Vrindavan and told him he had to come to Vijayanagara and act as a witness. And indeed, the deity said, well, I can't, how can a deity walk? So the Brahmin said, well, if you can talk, you can walk. So the Gopal thought about it and said, yeah, that makes sense. So he said, I'll go. So he walked to Vijayanagara and he acted as the witness there, the witness Gopal. So similarly, Srila Prabhupada, he's there in his Murti when he was asked, are you in your pictures? And Prabhupada said, yes, he's there. How he does it? He does it because he's fully empowered by Krishna. Not that he's become God, but because he's fully empowered by Krishna, he can do whatever Krishna wants. And since he's the founder Acharya, and he's fully empowered by Krishna, therefore, he can appear to anyone who wants him to appear. Of course, if we want Prabhupada to remain a statue, he's willing to do that for whatever we want him to be, he'll be for us. And if we want him to be Prabhupada and we worship him accordingly, then he'll reveal himself, that he's actually conscious. We have examples of that, like in New Vrindavan. When New Vrindavan left ISKCON, then the one lady they have a Prabhupada palace there with a Murti of Prabhupada, and one lady was visiting, just an ordinary lady, southern lady, Christian, and she was about to leave. She was all by herself in the palace, and she was about to leave, and she heard a voice saying, "Take my shoe." She looked around, and there was no one there. So she said, "Oh, I must be imagining." So she was about to, no, take my shoe. And the voice wouldn't leave her alone. So whenever no one was looking, she took one of Prabhupada's slippers, put her in her purse, and then went home. So some years later, when New Vrindavan came back to ISKCON, she had a dream, and in the dream Prabhupada came to her and said, "Bring my shoe back." So she went to New Vrindavan and brought the shoe back. So this is just an ordinary lady, a Christian, not even a devotee. And Prabhupada used her in his service. So Krishna is not so limited as we may imagine him to be. Actually, he's unlimited. And he can empower his devotee to do whatever he wants. He can be unlimited. If you read the Srimad Bhagavatam, there's so many devotees, they're doing so many unlimited things. If we don't accept that, then we think the whole Srimad Bhagavatam is just an allegory, a mythology. That Dhruva Maharaj, he pressed his foot down on the earth and it all caved in. He stopped his breathing and everyone was suffocated. Sure, right. Yes. So unless we accept it as reality, then we'll take it as mythology. So we think Krishna's pure devotee, the Uttamadhikari, is limited, then we'll actually have a very limited conception of reality, what Krishna can do. On the other hand, it is not that Prabhupada came and he did everything by himself. He also has he empowered, according to our sincerity and our willingness to act as an instrument, those who are followers of Prabhupada also become empowered to serve as an instrument for Prabhupada on his behalf too. That's called disciple succession. So disciple succession is not just a formality, although it also is a formality of initiation. It's also instructions. So, Rupa goes, and Prabhupada said, we should not, even if we're taking the role of a spiritual master, Prabhupada advises here, everything one possesses should be offered to him. That is the Uttamadhikari. For his enjoying that one should deliver whatever he has to the spiritual master. The brahmachari in particular is supposed to beg alms from others and offer them to the spiritual master. However, one should not imitate the behavior of advanced devotee or Mahabhagavat without being self-realized, for by such imitation one will eventually become degraded. So none of us have to try to pretend we're something we're not, because we're already doing that. We don't have to try to do it any more than we're already doing it. We already have a problem because we're pretending to be something we're not. So we have to get over that. And that's part of advancement in Krishna consciousness. So we shouldn't pretend to be Uttamadhikari when we're actually not. In other words, unless I'm completely out of the bodily concept of life, that's just called liberation. And unless I'm fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness, that's called Mahabhagavat, where I have all mystic powers, and I know exactly the heart of all my disciples, then I can claim I'm an Uttamadhikari. And if I claim like that and I'm not, I'm going to get myself into trouble, as we've seen already. I remember one of my friends was one of the 11 initiating gurus, or acharyas. I had a lot of friends like that. And I remember one day, because we were friendly, he was the one who recommended me for sannyas in '78. And he turned to me one time, we were taking lunch together, he said, "Isn't it amazing, now I'm initiating guru and I have all mystic powers." I said, "Really?" I was just beginning to learn not to contradict everything everyone said like that. Anyhow, he didn't have all mystic powers, by the way. He was trying to figure it out. Because after all, the Prabhupada left in 1977. This particular devotee joined in 72, so he had all of 5 years to develop all mystic powers to become an Uttamadhikari. Little difficult. Anyone who's been around for 5 years will know that. Besides that, he was one of the biggest managers in our society, so he had no time to read Prabhupada's books. So he had no idea, he had little idea what the philosophy was. He was a very sweet devotee, actually. took a little too many LSD trips, though. But because he was given a position, therefore his imagination and association with others with a similar imagination, he just didn't understand things properly. And therefore live and learn. So the end of the purport, because we don't have time, but I'll just kind of summarize it. Prabhupada said we should first of all try to see everyone what level they're on. Why? Because then we know how to serve them appropriately. So for some devotees, some people will act as a guide. Everyone will have some guide. Even a mother guides her child. Some people come to the temple and we act as their guide, the Vartma Pradaksha Guru. And therefore we should know how to guide them. We should see what their interests are, what their talents are, and engage them in Krishna service. So we're acting as their guide. And others we may cooperate with for this mutual interest of helping each other become Krishna conscious and giving this to others. And others who are more advanced in some ways, we take them as guru. And those four things, more serious than we are in Krishna consciousness, more strictly following the principles, chanting their rounds every day sincerely, and always thinking of how to spread the Krishna consciousness movement. So we learn from them. And from the spiritual master, as Prabhupada will say here, just by giving initiation doesn't make you an Uttama Adhikari, obviously. But if the spiritual master takes shelter of the Uttama Adhikari, our founder Acharya, and acts according to his will, and repeats his message to the best of one's ability, then he's strictly following the principles. I would probably say there's two types of gurus, initiating gurus. One who's strictly one who's on the platform of Uttama Adhikari, like Srimati Radharani, who sees everyone else as her potential spiritual master, and one who's strictly following the Uttama Adhikari. So, Prabhupada writes at the end that, anyhow, if we follow that instruction, then we'll be able to explain to our followers, whether we're Shiksha or Diksha gurus, how to see the good qualities in others, especially those qualities I mentioned, how to cooperate with the devotees in the loving exchanges, those are on the same level, and how to help the innocent. And if the spiritual master, those who are initiating, give that instruction properly and develop faith, in other words, if they teach their followers how to see others as guru, anyone who's guru, who's superior in some way, and faithfully, and go through the process of developing those good qualities by submissive inquiry and service, because that's the only way we develop good qualities, is by submissive inquiry and service. How did you become so steady in your service? What can I do to assist you in your service, etc.? When the devotees see that the spiritual master, the initiating guru, is training his disciples, his followers, according to Prabhupada's instructions and according to Prabhupada's example in these loving exchanges, then the devotees in general, especially those who are actually acting as gurus, those that are trying to be cooperating, those who are innocent, will see that this devotee actually has a bona fide guru. He's actually instructing us as Prabhupada would instruct us, giving us the example that Prabhupada would give us, and therefore they develop faith, they themselves develop faith in that guru. And when the guru sees that the other shiksha gurus of his disciple, the other devotees he's cooperating with, and the other innocent people are appreciating his service, then he gives them more inspiration to his disciple to follow more strictly his shiksha gurus and serve better the other Vaishnavas, who become inspired to even give the disciple more faith in the other shiksha gurus and the other disciples, and the other devotees he's cooperating with, and with other innocent people. And the whole thing runs properly if we recognize that Prabhupada is still present, that everyone has the opportunity to take shelter of Prabhupada. Prabhupada's not a competitor in the lives of the disciples. It's not a competition. Who's the guru? That, no, you're my disciple, you're not Prabhupada. Everyone is actually, Prabhupada never considered himself to be the guru. He considered himself to be the servant of his spiritual master. And by serving his spiritual master faithfully as an instrument, he might be able to do good to others. So the guru never considers himself to be guru, he considers himself to be disciple, and by serving his spiritual master, he might be able to do good as an instrument, do good for others. So it's not a competition, but Prabhupada he's an empowered Vaishnava. And an empowered Vaishnava has unlimited potency to help others, and the best we can do is try to become his assistant, and by becoming his assistant, that's how we become empowered Vaishnavas. No matter what our position is, whether we're acting by giving shiksha or diksha or anything else, we become empowered by actually assisting the empowered Vaishnava. So I'll stop there. Thank you. Any questions or comments? Yes.
Thank you for inspiring lecture. I would just like to ask, when you mentioned that we tend to pretend to be something we are not. So could you please tell something about how to react in moments when we observe this tendency? So how to, in long term, avoid following this tendency as much as possible?
Well, we should be very happy when we observe the tendency. Otherwise, we're completely absorbed in it. Only once in a while we realize that we're completely absorbed in the false ego. And we recognize that we should be joyful, that finally I realized it a little bit. I made a little progress. Now I can recognize it a little bit. So that's good. If we recognize it, then we can do something about it. But usually, most of the time, we're just unconscious. And even if we become a little conscious, a lot of times we reject it because it's very inconvenient. How can a nice person like me? Besides that, even if I have a false ego, it's a nice false ego. Because I have a nice false ego, so it's not so bad. Other people like it too, so it's a good service to Krishna. So, but anyhow, if we realize something like that, that's good. It's a little bit of progress. Anything else?
Hare Krishna. I would like to ask, just by his question also, when you recognize something in you, usually for me then comes pain, or it comes some feeling that, oh, I need to change this, or
Very good. Yeah.
Sometimes it's harder than this. The pain when it comes, or the realization when it comes, sometimes it's hard to just clean it out, or...
Yeah, to become a servant of the servant of the servant of Krishna is a big blow to the false ego. No one came to this material world to become the servant of Krishna's devotees. Therefore, Maya will make it very painful to us. She says, oh my God, what a horrible thought. You don't believe that, do you? Even if you believe it, you're not going to accept it. You didn't spend it since time immemorial here just to become a servant, did you? You're already a servant. You gave it up. Now work hard to become the master. So it's difficult, yeah. Therefore Krishna says, that which in the beginning may be bitter like poison, at the end is like nectar, and which awakens one to self-realization, said to be happiness in the mode of goodness. So many persons in the past, they took to the path of self-realization, they gave it up, because they found out they had to become a servant of the servant of the servant. They weren't going to become God by following the path. And therefore they retreated. They went back to mommy, or to their girlfriend. Or, they went back to their job to make some money. I remember one devotee, he got an inheritance of $25 million. This is like 40 years ago. So he went to pick it up, and after he picked up the $25 million, he sent a note. He sent a note back to the temple with all his devotional clothes, all his books, his japa beads and everything. Said, I don't need these anymore. So generally we take the devotional service, not to give up our false ego, but to enhance it. And when we finally realize I have to give up my false ego, it's painful. Then we have to make a choice. Do we really want Krishna, or we want our false ego? All right, thank you very much. Grantaraj, Nectar of Instruction, Ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada, Ki Jai. Gaur Premanande.
Njegova svetost Pralananda s vami, hvala lepa za inspirativno lekcijo. Naj povem, da sledijo zdaj obvestila. Poleg Pralananda s vami se je ponovno vrnil njegova svetost Čandramauli s vami. Sem jaz mogoče kaj zgrešila? A zdaj kaj še? Aha, pardon, ja. Potem pa je zdaj kirtan, se upravičujem.
Kipa Jayo Jayo Gaurachande Rarati Koshoba Rarati Koshoba Jahanavi Tatavane Jagamana loba Dakine Nitai Chan Bamegadadar Ikate Advaita Srini Vasa Chatradara Vasi Arche Gaurachan Ratna Simhasane Arati Korena Brahma Adi Devagane Narahri Adi Kori Chamaradulaya Sanjaya Mukunda Vasu Goshadigaya Satala Madhura Mridanga Bhaje Paramarasala Shanka Bhaje Ganta Bhaje Madhur 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 Bhaje Shanka Bhaje Ganta Bhaje Madhur 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 Bhaje Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Bahu Koti Chandra Jine Vadana Ujvala Gala Deshe Vanamala Kore Jalamala Shiva Sukha Narada Primegada Gada Bhakti Vinoda Dike Gurara Sampada Kipa Jaya Jaya Gaurachandra Radhi Kushobha Janavi Tatavane Jagamana Loba Rotik Shobha Jagadana Manaloba Gorangera Rotik Shobha Jagadana Manaloba Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschathyadishatarine Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasade Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasade Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasade Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Jai Gaur Premanande.
Jai Vishnupada Paramahams Brahmadakacharya Asatara Sudushi Shriman, His Divine Grace Shalasi Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, ISKCON Samstapacharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Jai Vishnupada Paramahams Brahmadakacharya Asatara Sudushi Shriman, His Divine Grace Srila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Anantya Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Shri Rup Sanatan Bharaganath, Shri Jeev Gopala Das Raghunath, Shat Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai, Prem Jago Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar, Shri Vasudhi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai, Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath, Shamakan Radhakan Giri Govindam Ki Jai, Mathura Dham Ki Jai, Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Mayapur Dham Ki Jai, Navadvip Dham Ki Jai, Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai, Ayodhya Dham Ki Jai, ISKCON Ljubljana Ki Jai, Gangamayi Ki Jai, Jamunamayi Ki Jai, Srimati Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Srimati Tulsi Devi Ki Jai, Shri Panchatattva Ki Jai, Shri Gaurnitai Ki Jai, Gaur Premanande Haribo, Slava Zavrani Bhakta, Slava Zavrani Bhakta, Slava Zavrani Bhakta, Slava Shri Guru Shri Gurangi.
Namaste Narasimhaya. Namaste Narasimhaya. Prahlada Dadaine. Prahlada Dadaine. Hiranyakashipu Vaksha. Shilatanka nakalaye. Shilatanka nakalaye. Ito nrsimha parato nrsimho. Ito nrsimha parato nrsimho. Yato yato yamitato nrsimha. Nrsimho Hardaye Nrsimho Nrsingamadim Sharanam Prapadi Tavakara Kamalavari Nakam Madhutta Singha Dalita Hiranyakashipu Tanubringa Kisha Keshavadrita Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Keshavadrita Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Shri Singhadev Bhagavan Prahlad Maharaj ki jai. Nitai Gaur Pramanande.
Sledijo obvestila. Naj povemo, da poleg njegove svetosti Pravadananda Swamije ponovno gostimo tudi v našem templju njegovo svetost Chandramauli Swamija. Toplo vabljeni vsak dan na njune lekcije, ki jih predvajamo na portalu Facebooka Skupno za zavest Krišne zjutraj in zvečer. Prav tako bi vas radi povabili k spremljanju in poslušanju programa Atma. Atma nam ponuja širok spekter vedskega znanja. S tem znanjem si bomo zagotovo trajnostno okrepili življenjski slog. Se veste, nekje sem prebrala in piše tako: bodimo sprememba, ki jo želimo videti v družbi. Predavanja potekajo vsako sredo ob 17. uri v živo v templju, v učilnici, prav tako preko Zooma in Facebooka. Lahko si pa predavanja, tudi ta, ki so že bila, pogledate na YouTube kanalu. Predavatelj Atme programa je dr. Anton Vezjak, naš Ananta Prabhu. In še eno pomembno obvestilo. Jutri je pomemben praznik. Je dan pojavitve Šri Advaita Acharje. Šri Advaita je član Panča Tatve. On se je pomolil za vse nas in priklical nam je gospoda Čajtanjo. Zato vas vabimo jutri, da se nam pridružite, da skupaj proslavimo njegov prihod in se mu na tak način izkažemo spoštovanje in se mu zahvalimo. Program je izobešen na oglasnih deskah. Lahko na kratko, ob 17. začnemo z bhajani in abhišeko, ob 18:30 s kirtanom, 19:15 pa predava njegova svetost Chandramauli Swami. Za vse, ki ste prvič tukaj, imamo tudi pripravljeno sladko darilce, dobite ga pri Bhaktini Andreji. Na voljo smo vam tudi za kakršnokoli vprašanje. Ob 19. uri ima Lalit Govinda Prabhu program Plus, tako da vas prosimo tudi, če bi lahko tam do 18:30 nekako izpraznili dvorano, da jo pospravimo in pripravimo na program Plus. Zdaj pa vas vabim na pojedino, vegetarijansko pojedino. Bone za pojedino dobite v trgovinici Atma Rama ali pa lahko podarite donacijo v škatlico, ki jo običajno postavimo tukaj pri deljenju prasadama. Zdaj sledi še molitev. Bi naše mlade baktine prosila.
Sharira vidya jal, Jodendriyata hekal, Jive previsha sagore, Taramadya jivati, Loba moj sudurmati, Taki chitaka dina sansare, Krishna boda doya moj, Ori bare jiva joy, Saprasada nadila vai, Senamrita pau, Radha Krishna guna gau, Primeta ko chaitanya tai, Bhagavat prasadam ki.
Želim vam prijetno druženje in hvala za obisk in še pridite, lepo prosim, ter kmalu zopet na snidenje. Hvala.